I'm Dan Pascone, CEO of Tailored Wealth and host of the Making Sense of Your Money podcast. Real conversations to help high earners make sharper decisions so their money works as hard as they do. Today, I'm joined by Michael Higgins of Mindful Finance to unpack why so many managers struggle with business finances, how cash flow blindness can sink even a growing company, and the way mid-level leaders create millions in value once they understand the numbers. If you lead teams, this episode shows why financial literacy is the difference between growth and collapse.
Brought to you by Tailored Wealth, helping business leaders live their version of a rich life.
Welcome to another edition of the Making Sense of Your Money podcast, where we cut through the financial noise and help business leaders to make smart, confident money decisions. Michael, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate having you on Making Sense of Your Money today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I can't wait to help people make more sense of their money. So,
that's great. I love it.
thank you.
We should have all of our guests introduce themselves that way. I like that. Very good. I'm going to share that with others. All right. So you've got a unique and interesting background, and I'm really excited to hear your story and then what you did to take your story and turn it into a business, which I always think is really cool. I've had a little bit of the same experience myself. So tell us a little bit about your background and then what you're doing now to help business leaders to make sense of finances within the corporate umbrella and make better business decisions.
Sure. I'm an older businessman, and I've been in the business world as solid for about 44, 45 years. And for about half of that time, I was in training, and then I left training to start to run a restoration water, fire, and flood damage company with my brother. And he said, "Hey, you want to go do something in the real world?" And I told him, "Well, I'm kind of doing something in the real world already, but sure, you're my older brother, sure." And we started this business. The first year we ran this restoration business. We had about $300,000 in revenue and about a 15% profit. I had no idea what that meant. Right. And then the next year we doubled in size, still at 15% profit. Had no idea what that meant. And the third year we were doubling again from 600,000. We were on our way to 1.2 million or more. And then we ran out of, if you could finish that sentence for me, Dan, we ran out of cash. We ran out of cash. And I had no idea that's what happened. And it was what a miserable 6 months that was. I mean, like the worst ever. And I left there and I thought to myself, what happened? And I did diagnosis. I talked to my brother a lot, and I realized that what had happened was that I didn't understand finance. And I didn't understand financials. I was good at running the company, the crews to go do the fire and the flood work. I was a good boss, cared for people. They knew that, all that stuff. And I did not understand finance. And because I didn't understand finance, I lost the whole business that I thought was going to be my business to the end of my career. And so I went back to the company I'd been working for, and they had a financial training division. I had been in their business personal communication training division. And they said to me, I said, "Hey, could I come back?" And they said, "Sure." I said, "Could I work for the financial training division?" They said, "Well, you're not very good at that." I said, "Well, I know. I've got proof I'm not good at that." But they knew I was a good trainer, so they let me back in again. And lo and behold, that was back in '97. So lo and behold, 27 years later, 28 years later, over time, I became a financial trainer. And my commitment is what made me do it was I have had the experience that there are a lot of managers out there in the world just like me, just like I would. They're really good at what they do. They're probably they're super high expertise, but they don't know how to put financial intelligence and financial decision making together with their expertise, and without ever intending to, because they love their companies. Their whole life is invested in their companies. Their kids going to college is invested in their companies. They want to do anything to make their companies successful. Without realizing it, they're actually costing their companies sometimes millions and millions of dollars, depending on the size of the company. And so that's how I started to turn my problem into my hobby or my avocation, and that is I'm now a financial trainer. And because I was such a phobic when I started, 40 years ago, 35 years ago, I have a certain style of teaching that makes it possible for me to bring people like me up and save them from the problem I had.
I love it. Yeah, listen, I'm always a huge fan of when you can see a challenge firsthand and witness it,
Right.
and then you
Right.
turn that into a business, right? Not only are you so invested in it, but to be able to tell your story and to be able to help others avoid some of the challenges that you face, it's very,
Exactly.
very powerful. I'm sure it's very, very gratifying for you as well.
Very, very gratifying.
I want to unpack that a little bit. So,
Sure.
what other than that training that you talked about, what did you do to get yourself from a novice who didn't understand that you're running out of cash to
Right.
now I'm an expert teaching people how to make educated financial decisions related to the
Right.
business?
Well, one thing I didn't do, I didn't go to college and get training at a college, and I
Yep.
didn't go to really formal seminars because I had the experience that they didn't really work well for people like me. I'll talk about that later. But I started to read and I started to study, and I was mentored by 3 different mentors along the way, and they were very high level experts in the financial training field. And so that's where I got my main training. They trained me, and then I get up in front of the room and make a fool of myself or whatever. And then after the session, they say, "How do you think you did?" And I don't think I did very well. And they say, "You didn't." And that's how you learn. And I got better and better and better. I was always a good trainer, and eventually, with that, my mentors, I became a good financial trainer and started doing workshops, and then eventually started designing my own workshops based on my experience of what I wanted to see have happen for the people who were like me, didn't have the financial experience they needed to be more successful.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the people that you're working with now and the challenges that you're helping them to overcome. I've seen this firsthand myself. Most of our audience knows this, but I was a corporate operator for a good portion of my career and I was a sales leader, right? And so my job was to generate revenue for the business, right? And I started to learn over time that the better, higher level executives and leaders didn't just focus on their one silo. They understood what their impact meant to the broader success of the business. So I'm sure that's what you're helping to coach people to do. So help our audience understand who within a business, first off, what types of businesses are you working with?
Okay.
Who within the business are you typically engaging with? And then we'll talk a little bit about the challenges that you're helping them to solve
That'd be
and
great.
the lessons helping them to learn.
Yeah, the people I engage with have become very specific
Okay.
in that I engage with non-financial decision makers,
Okay.
and that means there's senior non-financial decision makers. That means everybody who's not in finance, essentially, and that means the people that run the senior managers that run marketing and they run sales and they run ops and all that, and then and even more specifically, the group that needs so far the greatest amount of help and has the greatest impact on companies once they get the help. Once they're invited to the financial decision making table in a way that they don't have to feel stupid or keep their mouth shut or put their head down because they don't understand what's going on, but they can say, "Well, wait, I have a question about that." That sort of thing starts to happen, and that is mid-level managers, because
Yeah.
there's always in the kind of companies I work with. I worked with companies that were. Probably the biggest company I worked with was General Motors and Verizon. But I worked with $36 billion steel companies and plant managers. I worked with $3 billion dairy companies, Bean Foods, and their operations and HR managers. I got to tell you this story. The HR manager, the guy who ran HR, came to me and said, "Hey, I worked with him in another company," and he said, "Can you come and train my HR manager?" I said, "Well, I don't specifically get HR managers. Why do you want me to?" He says, "Because they have doctorates and MBAs in their field, and the operations folk call them picnic planners." And his face got really tight. And I
Right.
said, "Oh, that must be humiliating." He says, "It, and I don't want to ever hear it again." And so,
Right.
I've trained in bigger companies. These days, with the use of Zoom, I'm able to train at smaller companies. And everything I do, I used to do these kind of trainings in 2 or 3 days, which is the classic format out there in the world. You go in 3 days to Cornell University or the University of Denver, whatever it is, American Management Association. But about 15 years ago, I decided I would never do it again. And the reason is, look, if I wanted to teach you, Dan, something about finance, let's say you had a subject you want to learn from me, I could do
Right.
it with you in 2 days. Do you know why? Do you
Right.
know why I could do it with you in 2 days? It's a
Probably
real
because I
question.
have some sort of financial background. A little bit.
Well, and you have neural pathways. And so you have places in your
Right.
brain where that stuff can stick. But when I get a non-financial decision maker, a mid-level or a senior level
Right.
non-financial decision maker, they're as smart as they could be. I had a guy, one
Right.
of the guys who ran a restoration company, coincidentally, and he came to me and said, "My managers just don't care." And I said, "Well, tell me." He told me why. And I said, "Yeah, Adam, I've been doing this for 25 years at that point, and I've never experienced that once." He says, "Yeah." He said, "Never." I said, "Never." They might feel frustrated that they don't know what to do. They might feel dumb because they don't understand what you're talking about, but they don't not care. And it was
Right.
true. And so those managers need to be taught in a way over time in small chunks and using the real numbers of their company as opposed to some generic numbers like how much money Apple made last year or what they had in the bank. Who cares?
Right.
When you teach managers with stuff that matters to them and you teach them over time so they can make mistakes and get better, they just eat it up with a spoon. They're dying to help their
So
company.
I want to hone in on that. So I can see there being multiple benefits here to what you do, right? Number one is you're obviously giving them skills to make better decisions that ultimately drive the company to having more financial success. That's the obvious one. The second one that I'm picking up on is there's a little bit of like a retention play. We're investing in our people. We're giving them longer term skill sets that the company, I assume, is funding. So there's very much an idea of personal growth that's involved here. And I know for myself, any company that invested in my personal growth, I was so much more loyal to. And that's sort of a foundation of the way I'm trying to build our company now. So talk a little bit about that aspect of it.
Sure. I'll talk to it from a really personal point of view. At some point in every training program, the people that are the mid-level managers and sometimes senior level managers. I had the senior level manager of a huge construction company, and he came in. And he was impeccable at his job, but he
Yeah.
had no idea how finance worked. And
Right.
he was controlling a whole part of the company.
Right.
And when he finally saw what it was, he said, he's a project manager and head of project manager. My team completely interacts with customers. We could get the receivables. We could collect the receivables faster and bring more cash in. And his boss and I looked at him and went, you could. And he did like $2 million. And so
Wow.
he was so grateful to his boss for giving him the opportunity to actually see the numbers in the company and make a difference to his kids' college and to his 401k and to sitting in those meetings with the high level managers with lots of financial experience and ask good questions. So I'd say that the experience that's so personal is people are just grateful to be included. They're dying to help their companies be successful so that they can have the life they want.
I love it. I love it. All right. So let's hone in on that middle manager for a second, because I agree with you. I think that's where you should invest a lot of your training and development dollars because they have such a big impact on the broader results of the organization. Tell me a little bit about like, what are the tactics? What are the concepts that you're working with the middle manager on? Are you teaching them like full scale P&L stuff? Are you delving a little bit more specifically into their specific business unit and like what they can control financially there? Give us an understanding of like what that experience looks like.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Yes to both. I think they have to have a view. And again, this is the whole gratitude. Thank you for including the experience that they have. I teach them the financial statements, the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash statement, but not like at an executive MBA at Harvard for a week. I don't want to blow their minds. They don't even need to know all that. They
Right.
need to be able to look at the financial statements on a regular basis. By the time people are done with us in a training program, we give them a a format they can use forever, a dashboard that they can use forever. But I teach them enough so that when they see that stuff and when they hear it mentioned, they have enough jargon in their head. You know how jargony finance is. They have enough jargon in their head that they can engage in the conversation. And then we always take their company's real financials. And sometimes the company's real financials are so high level that they don't relate to it. Then we grab reports that go to them from the company's high level financials and have them work with the reports that show them how their production is, how many pieces of something are coming off the line, how many hours it's taking them to do a restoration job, a smoke damage restoration job. So we always take it down to the specifics of their job, but we also give them the big picture. And we always have them take on things that are real to their jobs and projects that are real to their jobs so that they can use what they're learning and say, wow, I actually reduced our cost per unit here. And that's when it starts to get in their brains and stay forever, when they realize that they're doing something good.
I love it. And how much of what you teach is nuanced from company to company? Like it sounds like you're working across a pretty wide array of different businesses and different industries. How unique is one company to another? Or how much of it is like the same general concepts that apply sort of universally?
Well, that's a good point. The reason I work with such a broad range of companies is that the principles are universal. Like a restoration company, they're not going to have a lot of inventory. They're a service company. They're going to focus on that. A manufacturer is going to have a lot of inventory because they got to make a product. But still, how to make more profit, how to make more cash flow, how to have higher margin revenue, how to have all the good money things in the world are almost exactly the same. And we actually take their statements and manipulate them a little bit so that they are more understandable by the common manager, and so that they can look at it and they can ask questions about it. And I say to them, look, the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to start asking better questions, and then after a while you're going to have better answers too. But first you're going to have better questions. So that's why I can work across a wide range of companies, automotive companies, manufacturers, service companies, distributors, but just use their financials, their reports, and their strategic objectives. Who cares what anybody else's strategic objective is, but more than the people in that company?
Right. Okay, that makes sense. And what are like the typical group sizes that you engage with? Are you typically doing a business unit at a time? Do you have leaders across various units? Like, what does a typical cohort look
The bigger the company is, the more specific the groups are, because
like?
they have, like with the guy at Dean Foods that I worked with, that I worked with as HR guys. I just had them. There were 70 of them, and I just had them in groups of 6 to 7, and we did them over a couple of years. But in a smaller company like a 15 or a 20 million or a 10 million or even a $30 million company, we probably will get we'll get leaders from every part of the company, mid-level and senior level managers. And because they also, even in a company that size, they also have kind of just one set of books, or one, well, of course they have one set of books, one set of P&Ls and balance sheets
Right.
and all that. And so they all learn off that, but they have reports that come off it. And when I work with people over 6 months or 7 months, that's the time that I give them 30 hours of training, which is like 3.5 day training over 6 to 7 months. So they get that same 30 hours. They're not spending, I spent 100 hours, spending the same 30 hours of training over 6 to 7 months. And in that time, they meet in groups, and we teach them in groups, and I teach them in groups. And then they also get one-on-one time with me, where they come to me and say, I don't understand the whole cash flow thing. I don't understand the whole balance
Right.
sheet thing. And I take time with them. So that's how. So we mostly have mixed groups in smaller companies, because it makes sense to have mixed groups in smaller companies.
Yeah, sure. Sure. I can see that being very valuable. I'm thinking back to my corporate days and having sort of like the diversity of different skill sets and expertise and focuses being really, really valuable to that training experience. What are the biggest challenges that you find that your, I'll call them students, face? What are the concepts that are maybe the most difficult to teach, or what are the questions that come up the most frequently?
Well, I know what the easiest thing to teach is, and we start there. We start with by having we created an hour and a half sort of a metaphorical company that fits everybody that comes into the training program. And the first thing we do is teach them about two of the financial statements, the balance sheet and the income statement. And we teach them how they go together and why they matter. And then a little while later, because this is when it start getting more difficult, we teach them about cash flow.
Right.
But by then they're already feeling more confident. But I find that the balance sheet and cash flow are a little harder for people to understand, even though all the managers that we bring in, all the mid and senior level managers, they have everything to do with making sure their company has enough green coming in for all the money going out that they have to pay bills and all that kind of stuff. So that we always go a little later in the program when they've got confidence. We spend probably the first 2 or 3 months of the program on the income statement. And we give them the
Got
income statement in a format that shows red and green, red being examine, green being kudos, so that they can actually look at an income statement and understand almost instantly what it's saying and where they should be putting their attention. So we really try to break it down for people. I don't know if you've seen a lot of small company income statements.
I have.
They can they can be pretty frightening. It's like
Yeah, they can be. Yeah, I've
they're
been there.
doing their
I've
best,
been
but
there.
you know, bigger companies, they spend a lot of money to get all that stuff to work. So we make sure that people can understand the financial statements and cash flow. I don't want to scare people on this call, but cash flow, it's a little harder to wrap your head around it. So we give it to them later in the program when they're already asking for more information and they're excited about what they're learning.
Very cool. Very cool. And then if I'm a CEO or a CFO that's engaging with you, I'm sure you teach the concept of ROI. How do you measure the ROI from the work that you do? Or how do you look to help
Right.
a CEO or a CFO wrap their arms around the return that they're going to get on this investment of dollars and time from their people?
Well, here's the thing that makes me glad that this is the training I'm doing, because when you're doing financial training, it shows up financially.
Right.
So it's so cool. It's like
Right.
sometimes,
Everything else might be a little bit tougher to
well,
actually
yeah,
evaluate. Yeah.
like harassment training, you better do it and you better do it fast, or
Right.
whatever other trainings are topical. But to measure the exact impact, you say, well, people are much happier. That's
Right.
great. They're
Or
not
we didn't get
harassing each
sued.
other.
Or we didn't get sued.
Right, right, right. I mean, but here, sometimes really, I can just go to the P&L. I had this construction company in Denver called Fiore and Sons. And at the end of for our first year together, we ended up working with him for 6 years because he has so many employees and so many managers. And I'll talk about the two different kinds of trainings we did with him. But at the end of the first year, he looked at his P&L and he went from 1.2 million in the red, which is why he brought me in, to 1.5 million in the black. And he said, and I couldn't have done it without you. Now, look, he did it, and his managers did it. They did it. He brought in 2 teams right up front, the project management team, and that guy brought in $2 million of cash flow, and the senior team. And then he started bringing in other teams from other sections. But also, everybody who comes into the program does something. They create a project called the Key Performance Indicator of something in their area that they want to change that's significant. And so that's the other way I measure it, because that I can completely control. And
Right.
the
You
people
can
that are
evaluate
working
that dedicated KPI before working with you and after working with you. And that's something like really specific and tangible that we can
yeah,
measure and show trend analysis on. Makes sense.
and we set it up that way, that they actually get a calculator
Smart.
that shows them. And then let me say one more thing about the training, that the deep dive training that we do. That's our main thing. And then at Fiore and Sons, and another company called Ryman Construction, and another company called Empire Printing, and Verizon Wireless, for example, we have another training called Everybody Makes a Difference. And it's a 4-hour training for supervisors and superintendents under those mid-level and senior level managers, where we give them the basics of income statements and key performance indicators. So that's the way we go to larger groups of people once we've got a group of people in their company who are already trained enough to support them and talk to them.
Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. All right, Michael, that's been great. Really, really appreciate your expertise. And I'm fascinated by the work that you do. We're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to move into the lightning round. So with every lightning round, we never tell our guests about this ahead of time, but we're going to allow the audience to get to know you a little bit more. And what I always say is, first thought that comes to your mind, one word answer, long drawn out thought, and anywhere in between. You ready?
Yep. Okay.
All right. We'll start with an easy one. Coffee or tea?
Coffee for sure.
Sounds good. One meal for the rest of your life. What is it?
Avocado toast with fresh ripe avocados and bread from the Harvest Bakery, cut into slices.
Oh, I love it. We haven't gotten that yet, but that's a good one. I'm a big fan of avocado toast if it's done right. Yeah. I love it. I love it. All right. What's one tool or technology, so it could be hardware or software, other than your computer or your phone, that you can't live without?
The software of Zoom. It enabled me to completely. I'm in my office right now, in my home office, and I train Dean Foods from here, and I train Fiore and Sons from here, and I train Adam Webster from here. So it enabled me to actually do lessons for 7 months. If I had to travel every time I did lessons, I'd have to travel like 30 times the customer to go meet with their people or meet. So thank God for Zoom.
Change the business world. That's for sure. I agree with that.
Dan.
Favorite quote or phrase about money or success?
Favorite quote or phrase about money or success? Oh, yeah. This is my favorite quote is from Warren Buffett, and he might have stolen it from somebody else. But he says, rising tide hides a lot of sins. Lowering tide, or as the tide goes down, you realize everybody's naked, something like that, which is my experience too. When I start to work with people and I start to ask the questions that nobody ever asked them, and they start to answer the question they never answered, I get to find out where they're really at and where the problems are. So I love that quote.
Do you have a favorite book on finance or business?
I do, and it's out on my deck right now because I go back to it a lot. It's called Financial Intelligence, and it's by Joan Knight and I think Karen Berman.
Okay, very cool.
And it's actually, I haven't gone back to it in a few years, but it's actually a little complex. But it's also, it actually explains balance sheets and why they matter, and EBITDA and why it matters, and income statements and why they matter. And they have 4 different versions of it: one for managers, one for entrepreneurs. So
I love it. I love it. That's very cool. Very cool. All right, I'm going to check that one out. What's one bucket list item that you've already accomplished?
Boy, in a certain way, this is kind of close to home for me. My bucket list includes having all the time I want to spend with my kids and with their kids. And to that end, and I didn't really accomplish this as much as we made the environment so wonderful for her. She wants to come back. Our youngest kid moved to Portland for 5 years, and she said, "Nah, damn it, I'm coming back," because she wants to come back home and see us. So having my kids all together in one place is part of my bucket list. And I've also I was born and raised in Hawaii. And,
Oh, really?
And part of my bucket list was going back to Hawaii and experiencing it from not living there. And we went back about 10 or 12 times, and it was a heavenly place. Yeah.
Awesome.
Good question.
What's one milestone you're still working towards?
I have, for the last 10 years, I've had a hunger to go to Portugal and to walk the Camino de Santiago, the 100-mile road between Portugal and Spain, and to walk at least a part of that road and drink sangria on the side of the road as we're proceeding through those incredible countries. That's Portugal is on my bucket list.
Very cool. Very cool. I love it. If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Don't put all your financial eggs in one basket.
Okay, that's a good one.
Just because we did that, and we've had to, and the basket went bloop, and we've had to, catch up. So don't put all your eggs in one basket.
For my business owner audience, for my audience that gets company equity or stock, heed that advice from Michael, and come talk to me if you want to figure out how to diversify. And then, Michael, finally, if our listeners want to connect with you, collaborate, follow you, what's the best way for them to get connected?
Our website, now you go there and it has phone numbers and everything. It's probably the easiest thing to do it. It's Mindful Finance, MyNDFUL. FINANCE.biz. And if they go there, then they'll see quotes from me, they'll see testimonials from customers, and a number to call me right at my desk. So
I love it. Very, very cool, Michael. Thank you so much for the time today. Really, really cool discussion. Thanks for sharing your expertise on your story and all things business, finance, and the trainings that come along with it. It's been great having you today.
Thank you. This is my first podcast, and I'm glad you were the guy that I did it with. So
I'm honored. Wow, I am absolutely honored. Thanks for joining me. I'm glad I could be your maiden voyage.
Yeah, thank you.
That's it for the episode. As always, you can find our podcast along with our newsletter and YouTube channel all for free at makingsenseofyourmoney.com. And as always, prioritize your version of a rich life.